Howdy, folks. Welcome back or welcome aboard. I just finished my 30-second exercise for the week. It's a zippy little tune we lead in with. You are listening to the Doc Owen Show, joined in Hilltop Studios by...
I'm a surefire.
And...
Uncle Bocce.
Uncle Bocce. We have got a gangbuster for you tonight, and we're just going to have to dive into it because, needless to say, there's a lot going on. We're not even going to be able to touch a lot of it, but that's okay. We are all over social media as Doc Owen Show, DOCOWENSHOW, and we are growing our presence out there. We kind of activated the Instagram activity today, hooked it up with Pinterest, so next thing you know, we'll be putting videos and all kinds of activity out there. We're really excited about it. The blog is cranked up. It's getting quite a few more views and input and comments, so that's good. We're glad you're going to it. It is called docowenshow.com. So go out there. The very first page that you go to in the upper right-hand corner, you can sign up for our email list, which you will get inundated with emails once a month. Is about as often as we remember to send them out, but it's nice to have every once in a while. And we have free, no charge, Zip Nada apps for both iPhone and Android, where you can listen to the show live as well as access our library of what are called podcasts after they've gone live. And pod stands for play on demand, if you're not familiar with that, which means you can play it on demand. We start our show, every show, in a very traditional manner. We go through the same routine because it works. The very first thing is a moment of inspiration from Ms. Surefire. Then we have this moment in history from Uncle Bocce. And then I close out the routine with a leadership quote or two. So let's get her underway. Ms. Surefire, take it away.
And tonight's quote comes from ChristianPost.com. It's from the book of Jeremiah, chapter 29, verse 11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Remember, God has a plan for you, and your hard work will not be done in vain.
There you go.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Firm believer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Absolutely, yes.
Yep.
I keep telling myself that.
Very, very smart.
Program.
Very smart little frog. Uncle Bocce?
Yes.
What happened at this point in
the
past?
A couple of things, but we'll keep this very brief. In 1784, in a letter to his daughter, Benjamin Franklin expressed his unhappiness over the choice of the eagle as a symbol of America.
What did he want?
Do you know what he wanted?
I got ahead of you. Sorry.
And he was very adamant about this. He wanted the
duck.
Gobble gobble. The turkey.
The turkey.
Oh,
yep.
No.
That's what he wanted. Yes.
Oh,
in Michigan.
Goodness.
And Michigan became the 26th state. So there you go.
Okay.
They're not related. That was in 1837.
No pun intended, but I really wasn't through digesting the turkey routine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I was like, what?
Yeah. All right. We have not one but two leadership quotes tonight, both from our friends at Crown Grace International. The first one is from a gentleman by the name of Warren Buffett. I didn't have time to look him up, so I'm not sure what he's famous for. It was a joke. And I think this quote is too. You got to really think about it. This is from Warren Buffett. Predicting rain doesn't count. Building arcs does. Okay?
Uh-huh.
The next one, also from Crown Grace, is from Proverbs 11:14. Without wise leadership, a nation falls. There is safety in having many advisors. Think about that one.
Good one.
Very apropos
that's right.
to tonight's show. Tonight's show is focused around an interview that I was privileged enough to conduct with a lady by the name of Publius Huldah. I'm not going to explain to you what it means because that's the first part of the conversation I had with Publius. As you'll recall, last week I told you that we went out to the Mecca here in Texas. We were in Shiner, Texas, and just south of there, 15 miles, is a little town called Yoakum, Texas.
I know I had to pull you away from that Mecca.
Yep, and Publius Huldah was in Yoakum as in having a conversation in front of a house full of people. I mean, the biggest hall that they had in Yoakum was standing room only. And it's a pretty good-sized place. There were probably, I'm going to say, about 250 or 300 people there. So she drew a pretty good crowd for the city of Yoakum. They came all the way in from Houston, Austin, and, of course, us from San Antonio. But they came from all around.
Dallas, too.
There were some people there from Dallas. That's right.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
So, they tried. And Publius is from East Tennessee, so she by far came the furthest. Mm-hmm. But it was a discussion of the reason she was there was to discuss a thing called the Convention of States, which is a huge movement going on in the United States, and we will talk about that after we have heard the interview with Publius. And if we have time, we might deal a little bit with what's going on with the Trumpinator. Mm-hmm. But I got a feeling if you are alive at this point in time, you have an earful of what's going on with Trump. We might be able to give you a little different angle on some of that. And I have been calling him the Trumpinator since midway through the preliminaries of the election, when he was Trumpinating all of his competition just to get the nomination to run for president. So, without going much further into that, Uncle Bocce, do you have a brief for us tonight? What are we going to talk about that's of historical significance?
I sure do.
All right.
Last week we were talking about what is the American.
Yeah.
And we went through a bunch of things. We discovered that some of the hallmark things about the American was diversity, religious freedom, economic opportunity, freedom from war, a tolerance, because in Europe many people were very intolerant. They came here, and we were developing a distinct culture.
Now we've gotten to the point where we've grown our own intolerance.
Well, yes, okay.
Oh, you didn't see that. He just held his hand up to me saying, "Quit."
No.
Okay, don't say any more.
Okay,
go ahead.
And we also have.
That conversation last week was very good. It was. I need to go back and listen to that podcast.
Absolutely.
Okay, go for it, sir.
And we also were developing our own distinct culture from the Brits.
Now, or back then?
Back then. I mean, that was going on. That's what was happening to the American back then.
Correct.
Tonight we're going to emphasize a little bit more on diversity because it's a hot topic in my mind.
They're having trouble with their funding.
Yeah, well, of course.
Go ahead.
So we'll look at a few statistics. In 1700, there were about 250,000 Europeans and African Americans in the colonies. However, by 1775, the number increased tenfold to 2.5 million. So there was tremendous growth.
In how many years?
That's in 75 years.
Okay.
Okay, it grew tenfold.
Wow.
So this huge increase was due in part to a prolific birth rate.
Oh.
Because remember, most people were agrarian back then, and they had big families because everybody had to work the farm.
You got it.
Okay?
Yep.
So, and in part to the steady flow of immigrants.
Okay.
Okay? So many people were still coming over here. The most concentrated period of migration to America occurred in the 15 years prior to the American Revolution. There was just a big boom.
Back up just a minute.
Yeah.
In all your studies,
Yeah.
about all of these immigrants coming in, this big wave of immigrants. Were they what we today would call vetted? Were they? Did we have an idea who they were, or where they were coming from, or what their families were, or what they did, or no?
No.
Okay.
No, it was a pretty open.
But they were Europeans.
Yeah, they were.
We knew that, right?
Yeah, well, and Africans.
Okay.
Yeah, so
okay.
that we knew.
Okay. Just curious.
So in the 15 years prior to the revolution, there was approximately another 220,000 people on the eastern seaboard alone. Many of them were Scots-Irish. The Scots, English, and Germans, they were the bulk of who came in. The 13 British colonies in which they arrived varied very differently. They were very different.
On their acceptance.
Not only on their acceptance, but in the culture, in
Yep.
the religion that was going on.
Yep.
The congregational churches dominated most of New England.
Okay.
Okay? The Anglicans, they were prevalent in Virginia. The Quakers settled Pennsylvania. And Catholics were tolerated primarily in Maryland and Pennsylvania. Remember, Maryland got its name because of
Maryland.
Yeah, Maryland, yeah. Okay? So the Scots-Irish tended to migrate to the west and to the south from Pennsylvania.
Right.
Okay? In New York and the Hudson Valley, there were a lot of Dutch still living there because that used to be part of the Dutch colony. Pennsylvania, they had enough Germans to alarm Benjamin Franklin. There were a lot of Germans that came in Texas too, but in
Right.
Pennsylvania.
3 Germans alarmed me.
Exactly. So Benjamin Franklin wrote in 1755, "Why should Pennsylvania, founded by the English, become a colony of aliens who will shortly be so numerous as to Germanize us instead of Anglifying us?" Now, think about that today.
Did they really use the word alien?
Yes, that was that was Ben Franklin. He wrote that. So, even back then in the 1700s, there was a concern about who we were as Americans. Same problem today. Same problem today. We have that same issue. Only today we're not doing very well.
Right.
Okay. More than 90% of colonial families, they lived in the rural areas, like we mentioned. And there were basically 4 different economies going on. In the Deep South, Georgia, South Carolina, of course, was rice. That was their chief export. Tobacco production dominated the Chesapeake Bay colonies. The middle colonies, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, they produced bread, flour, and grain. And New England's chief export were dried fish, livestock, and wood. So these different regions were actually doing different things.
Sure.
Okay? The great majority of African Americans lived and were enslaved in the southern colonies, even though the North had some too, but it was mostly the southern colonies.
Well, it wasn't, but it wasn't, to be clear, for our young audience, I don't think it was because the Southerners were more prone to enslave people. I think it's because of the agrarian economy that you were just talking about.
Bingo.
And versus, the industrial, or, I mean, it was different. And they required a lot of manual labor. We've talked about that before.
Yes, excellent
It was a
point.
critical part of the. So it wasn't a cultural thing.
No,
it was
an economic.
It was those were economic decisions.
Exactly.
Okay, and they weren't all treated poorly.
Oh no. A lot of them
they really weren't.
They were treated very well. Some of them were treated very well.
Right.
Okay, the great majority of African Americans, they lived in the enslaved part of the southern colonies, most of them. In Virginia, in 1790, slaves numbered about 300,000. That's just in one colony.
Wow.
Okay? At approximately the same time, a majority of South Carolina was African American. So there were more blacks in South Carolina than there were whites. The number of blacks...
That's still true.
Yeah, it probably is.
Okay.
The number of free blacks grew dramatically after the Revolution,
Sure.
from 60,000 in 1790 to 110,000 10 years later. Still, that figure represented just 11%
Yeah.
of the total African American population.
That's still a small number.
It is.
I mean, right.
It really is. So, as far as diversity is concerned, that's the American way. We are a diverse population. This is a botchyism, okay, that I'm going to put myself out on the line here.
Okay.
I think, and guys, you do the research and tell me I'm wrong, but I think that we have a problem with diversity today primarily because some people in the government decided it was advantageous to them to break people up into separate groups.
Before the hyphens came.
Before the hyphens came, the song, connect the dots.
Yeah,
right?
right.
That's just the botchyism. I have not done any research on that. And if you think differently, let me know.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree. Do your own homework.
Yes.
But I totally agree with your premise, and there are things that I called intuitively logical. In other words,
you got that out.
It's kind of like if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck,
it's a duck.
Pretty good chance it's a duck.
Yes.
So no, I agree with you on your
Yeah.
assumption. You know, there was a time that we were all just Americans.
Exactly. Even though we were diverse.
No,
that's
It's not an even though we were diverse. Diversity was not an issue.
Exactly.
It was an assumption.
It was right.
Yes, ma'am.
What I had kind of found out through research and all is like the United Nations did a lot to divide the people.
Yep.
Because
Yep.
I'm the first one to always say Hispanic is not a race.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's part of the white race, but that United Nations started to divide
That's where
them.
that started. Sure.
Uh-huh.
Sure.
Yes.
And
It's wrong.
And we all know how socialist they are.
Well, yeah, and the absolutely correct. I mean, the point is about historically, this is a diverse nation, but it is an assimilated diversity.
Yes,
and that's critical.
Exactly.
We're proud of our diversity.
Yeah.
As long as it's an assimilated diversity, and we're all speaking from the same heart and the same level.
Exactly. And it's in the American blood.
Sure it is.
It's in there. It's already there.
No, they've had to work very, very hard to create groups out of us.
Yes.
And it's so there's a group in the country that don't want us to. They don't want us to regain that strength of assimilation. Right. When we all get behind something, that's an issue for them.
Yes. Yes.
You know, that dilutes their power when they can't run us up against each other. You put your papers away. Was that our brief for tonight?
That is it for tonight.
You obviously kicked off a good conversation.
Good.
So who are you? Where can I find you?
I am Uncle
Besides
Bachi.
stopping by here every Thursday night.
Yeah, right. I'm Uncle Bachi. UNCLEBACI at DuckOwenShow.com.
Uncle Bachi. Good job.
Thanks, Uncle
Thank you, sir. Now, when are we going to get into this discussion of presidents? Or are we going to do that?
Well, that'll be a little way down the road.
We still got some about
because
America.
what I want, what I'm planning, what I want to do is I want to get us through the revolution.
Uncle Bachi's the historian for the show, and he teaches us all history, but he just refuses to publish a syllabus. So it's like week to week. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I have one, but I just I use that as a guide.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's.
So what are we doing next week?
Next week, we'll be talking still about the things that happened prior to the Declaration of Independence.
Okay.
The things that led up to it.
Okay.
So we'll be getting into more of why do we hate the Brits kind of thing. Why do we want to separate from them? Not why we hate them. Why do we want to separate from them?
Well, we don't hate them. It's the fact that the way they talk, they think they're superior to us.
That's it.
It's the tone of voice. It's the way they speak.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Just good.
All right. Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome.
You are now going to hear a conversation that I really enjoyed having. You might hear me sort of stutter and stammer in the beginning simply because I had just sat through an hour and a half of listening to this young lady debate her side of an argument about the Convention of States. I was still kind of processing that information and totally in awe of what she brought to the table in her own calm, straightforward demeanor. So, if you will, we are going to turn the show over to a conversation with Miss Publius Huldah. Thank you. I feel like I'm with the Rolling Stone and about to interview Mick Jagger. I'm in the presence of a young lady by the name of Publius Huldah. I tried to look up what it means in Latin. I know enough Latin to know what the Publius is, but I couldn't find the Huldah. So you're going to have to explain that to the audience. But as you know, as the audience knows, I quote you all the time. And I refer to you on my blog. You are what I call a WFA, which is the world's foremost authority on the United States Constitution. And after hearing you speak for an hour and a half prior to this, I understand why we think so much of you.
Thank you.
That, it's absolutely well earned. So, Publius, how are you? Welcome to Texas.
I'm well, thank
Welcome to
you.
Texas.
About Huldah.
Yes.
At 2 Kings 22, there was a prophet Huldah. The law had been lost in Israel, and they were making renovations to the temple, and they discovered the book of the law, and they took it to the King Josiah, and King Josiah looked at it and said, "Take this to Huldah and see what the word of the Lord is." And so they took it to Huldah, and she recognized it as the law, God's law.
God's law.
And she pronounced, however, that because Israel had been apostate for so long,
yes,
God had resolved to bring judgment upon Israel.
Okay.
But he would postpone it for a little while because of King Josiah's faithfulness.
Okay.
So in our country, our law, the Constitution, has been, in effect, lost for 100 years.
You made that statement.
Yeah.
I peg it at about 60 to 70, but I'm sure you're right. So
Yeah.
yes, ma'am.
So I see my duty as to bring the law back to America. And of course, Publius is the pen name that the writers of the Federalist Papers use. So Publius Huldah.
Got it.
And that's
there you
my
have
name.
it.
Yeah.
There you have it.
That describes my mission in life.
Well, you said your duty, and obviously you are, besides a constitutional scholar, you're a biblical scholar.
Yes.
Because the two are, as we know, rather well entwined.
They are.
And it's trying to separate the two that causes issues.
Correct.
In both worlds.
Yes.
Right? Because you spoke today about, you quoted, I've forgotten who, but, one of our founders, about electing people with virtue and wisdom. Neither of which we're doing a very good job of.
Right. That was James Madison.
Right.
Said that.
Okay. I knew it was one of the founders. I just didn't remember
which one.
At
the Virginia Ratifying Convention on June the 20th, 1788.
I told you, folks. Chapter and verse. She had a debate today with a young man. I really, to be honest, don't know exactly his name or where he's from. I'll find out before I put the broadcast on. But he was a salesman. He was doing sales 101 techniques, and I used to be a sales manager and taught sales. And he was up against PH, as he's affectionately called, and who was just quoting chapter and verse from the Constitution and how it came about, and holding up evidence after evidence after evidence. It was quite something. It wasn't a very fair match, but it's okay. So you mentioned the fact that you referred to it as being your duty, and I would consider it more of a calling. In other words, you're a lawyer.
Yes.
You have a law degree. Did you practice law before?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I was a litigation attorney.
Okay.
Trial and appellate.
Trial and appellate.
Yeah.
All right. How long did you do that?
Oh, I practiced law for a little over 20 years.
Really?
But then I retired because I was exhausted.
Yes.
I was going to retire to a life of peace, gardening, having a rose garden, cooking, gourmet cooking, and learning biblical Greek. That was my plan.
Okay.
But then Obama got elected. So I took out my...
So all of this is relatively new to you.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
I didn't know that. I was not
Yes.
aware of that.
I put
Okay.
everything in
So
my
he did the
life.
same thing to you that he did to me. That was when I decided to
I
start
said,
using my voice.
I have got to make restoring liberty in this country the main purpose of my daily life.
Wow.
And that's what I've done ever since.
Good for you.
And I'm unfunded and unaffiliated, so this is all donated time.
Well, but that's probably, as we both know, unfortunately, that's the only way to stay pure.
Yeah,
That I've not found anybody
Nobody
yet
owns
that
me.
I've not found any funding sources yet that don't have an agenda. Eventually, and that's what you're avoiding. So, well, good for you. That was one of the reasons I wanted to have you on. As you know, our tagline for the show is delivering truth to youth. Our objective is to reach the 16 to 30-year-old audience. How do we do that? You're a smart lady. I mean, you've got this calling and this message to get out there. And yet most of the time our audiences look like they did today. So are you seeing the capability to do that? Do you have audiences that are younger? I mean, are you getting those venues?
I spent most of my life talking to other lawyers and judges.
So I'm so sorry for you,
Yeah.
but that's okay.
Well,
you
that's what I
you got to
did.
do what you got to
Yeah.
do, right?
So I only began talking to the public
After
when
Obama?
after Obama got elected.
Wow.
Most of the people in my audiences are, as we say, a little bit older.
Yep.
But I do occasionally see some young people.
Okay.
But what my hope is that I see it as my calling is to put information and arguments out there and to hope that others will pick it up and translate it into terms that everyone can understand, to popularize it among the young.
You do a fabulous job
Yeah.
of putting it out there in terms that everybody can understand, let me tell you. But in a scholarly way. So what you're saying, popularize is a very good term for it. All right, so what we need to do is we need to hook you up with a rock and roll band that can create a ballad of sorts in the current genre.
Well, yeah, art
Yes.
is one of the most powerful ways of reaching people.
Right.
Charles Dickens, his novel Bleak House, was an extremely popular novel, and deservedly so. That novel resulted in the reformation of the British Chancery court system. It
Okay.
had such influence. So yes, artists have tremendous influence. But I don't know how to translate what I talk about in legal terms into art because I'm not gifted with artistry.
Oh, I think more than you know, but that's okay. And it's somewhat in the eye of the beholder. I mean, I've found what you did today quite presentable, quite artistic. I mean,
thank you.
in its own arena. You raised the bar.
Thank you.
And particularly in Yoakum, Texas, of all places. Do you know where you are? I mean, this is a small, we're in rural Texas.
I was so honored well, first of all, I was raised on a farm. So there's nothing I love more than
you're in your comfort zone.
I'm in my comfort zone in a rural area.
Okay.
And I was so honored to be invited here to speak.
It's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, for them to do that, I think it was, when I found out you were going to be this close to where we are, San Antonio, about an hour and a half away, and not but 15 minutes away from my favorite brewery.
Which is that?
Shiner, Texas. There's
Texas.
a really good brewery about 15 miles up the road that serves some mean beer.
And I love driving in Texas with your 75-mile-an-hour speed limits, and there's no traffic on the road. Oh, it's great driving here.
Oh, I don't know so much about the no traffic, but you must you drove all the way. You drove from Tennessee.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's a hard charge. I've done that.
It is a hard charge.
That's if you came, what'd you do? Come across to Dallas and then down, or did you cut through East Texas?
My husband drove.
You did?
I don't do driving.
Okay.
My vision is so poor I can't see.
That's all that time buried in books, so you see well up, up close. What can we do? You've answered one question, I really want to know what we can do to energize the youth. How would that work? Do you have some people that are taking your work and kind of popularizing, as you say?
Yes.
I would hate to reinterpret. In other words, because I like it like it is.
Yeah.
But how would the young folks?
Well, my presentation today was about 35 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
I need to. The videos that people will watch on the internet.
Yes, ma'am.
YouTube's short ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. 3 minutes, 4 minutes. I did have one 12-minute video, which was posted on one website, which had over 500,000 views. But that was because it was about natural-born citizen. And people were very interested in that because of the election. But for the most part, people won't watch videos if they're longer than 5 minutes.
The audience couldn't see me grinning when you brought that up.
About national popular vote?
Well, no, the natural-born citizen.
Oh, yeah.
You did a paper on that, or you put something on the blog.
Yeah, plus the video.
I looked it up. I was a Ted Cruz supporter, but I like to think of myself as a purist in terms of the Constitution. And I attend a regular monthly meeting of like-minded patriots, and I speak up and speak out. And
really? No kidding.
Yeah, you could never tell. And I had to apologize to them because and I quoted you. I mean, I said, this is where I got it. And she's got it very well interpreted, and Mr. Cruz is not eligible, according to the terms of no matter how much we may like him, if we really want to be constitutional purists, which I like to think that I am, I have to switch.
Yeah.
And I did. I stood up publicly and made that,
Good for you. A man who adheres to principle. Yeah.
Well, if I'm going to ask others to,
right,
then I need to do the same.
Yes.
I need to let people know that that's the way I feel about it. So that was really the first time that I got hooked on what you had to say, or committed to what you had to say. Let's put it that way. So it's funny that you brought it up. So what's on the horizon? What's on the horizon? I mean, other than this, what do you see in terms of? We just had a national election where there are those of us that are hoping he lives long enough to be inaugurated. and certainly lives through at least his first term, I think it's going to be challenging. I really do. And that's an unfortunate thought to have. I don't like to have to think that way. Well, what do you see on the horizon beyond the Convention of States, beyond as the threats to the Article 5 Convention, which I really liked what you had to say, and I recorded it.
Yeah, it's a marketing gimmick.
I know that's what you said.
Yeah.
And when you shot holes in it with your references to the past, then it becomes very apparent.
Yeah.
But they're strong. It's good. I mean, as you said, I think in the blog, they've been very effective marketing it to Tea Party groups, who are now being effective marketing it to their state representatives.
See, here's the problem. People who do as I do, go around speaking against an Article 5 convention. We are smeared, maligned, slandered.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, folks, remember, she's a very strong attorney, so when she uses those words, that she knows exactly what she's saying. So go ahead.
We are not allowed to speak to Tea Party groups. The chairman of a Tea Party group, I am not. If the leadership of a Tea Party group has bought the con, they will not permit me to address their members. This kind of censorship is going on all over the country.
Not just you, but anybody. Anybody, like if I wanted to speak in support of you, as a trainee, if you will, or whatever.
You would not be allowed to address many of these Tea Party groups.
As soon as they found out what I was, right.
It is Americans who are censoring other Americans.
Yes, ma'am.
The federal government doesn't need to censor people like me.
It's
so-called patriotic Americans are censoring me. This happens all the time. And I have had several of my events canceled.
Are you really?
Yes. Mark Meckler, who is head of the Convention of States Project.
I know the name,
and Michael Ferris, who is involved with the Convention of States Project and the Parental Rights Amendment. They have personally telephoned hostesses of mine and have urged them to cancel my appearance. That is how adamant they are about preventing people from hearing the anti-convention side.
You must really have something to say.
I do.
But the fact that they're...
I back it up with evidence.
How dare you?
Yes.
That's unheard of.
You notice that the young man tonight didn't produce any original source documents. All he told us to do was to go to the website, the COS website, and read scholarly articles that other COS supporters had written. No original source documents from our founders and framers.
Correct.
Which is all I deal with.
Yes, ma'am. And I got a chuckle out of his reference to scholarly articles.
Oh, yes.
I doubt it.
Because they all say the same thing.
Right. It's marketing literature.
Yes.
Right. I mean, it's like...
and they quote each other's.
Well, sure. Current day marketing literature is called white papers. They put it out as reality, and really it's a marketing piece. It's angled to, and they feed off of each other. They link their blogs to other blogs, not to historic documents like you do. You know.
And when they do mention historic documents, they don't produce them, but they misrepresent them. For example, the young man tonight. I mentioned the April 2014 video where Justice Scalia said, I don't want a constitutional convention. What would come out of that?
Right.
The young man tonight cited Justice Scalia's words in a symposium in 1976.
76 is what I think he said. Yeah.
1976. Well, as I told the people today, in 1976, I thought abortion was just fine.
Was okay.
Yeah. But then I was presented with the truth, and I got convicted, and I renounced my sin.
Right.
And so anybody who cited me as saying abortion was okay in 1976 would be dishonest if he presented that as my position today.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
I mean,
which is what he did.
Right. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
I noticed that just like you did. And I saw you flinch. Flinch may not be a good word, but she was constantly just holding up, just for the audience, holding up a piece of paper. One of the main things that, and as a matter of fact, last week, before I realized you were going to be here, a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about the enumerated powers. And
my favorite phrase.
That's not us.
No.
I was telling the audience that they're not beeping us to get out. But here it is right here. Boom.
Yes. That's it.
The enumerated powers, and it fits in about one quarter of an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. I mean, it's minimal.
Yeah.
And so the gist of the conversation or the back and forth was, we already have what they are trying to do, a convention of states to create.
Article 5 convention.
Why do I keep doing that?
Because
it's working.
Because it's working. Yeah. Yeah.
Dad, Bernie. You're
By
right. I mean,
that
it's working.
Terminology, they make people think that there's a convention controlled by the states, and that's not true. Article 5 doesn't say that. Article 5 says Congress calls it. And the word call is a legal term. It has a specific import.
Yes, ma'am.
It means a person who calls a meeting or calls a convention, this is the topic, this is where it's going to be, this is the time, this is how we're going to pay for it,
and this is who will be there.
Who's going to be there.
Right.
Or this is how they'll be appointed.
Right.
That's what it means to call a convention. And Article 1, Section 8, last clause, the necessary and proper clause, delegates to Congress the power to make laws to carry out the powers delegated to Congress. So yes, of course Congress has the power to set up the convention. The states have no authority whatsoever. And the CRS report of April 2014 shows that Congress has always understood that they have this power. The states don't have any power over the convention except to apply to Congress to call it.
To urge.
Yeah.
Right.
And then
public pressure.
Yeah.
Public pressure.
Yeah. And then once Congress sets it up and the delegates assemble,
it's being sold to the Tea Party as completely different.
I know it.
You are aware of that?
I'm aware. I know what they're telling the Tea Parties, and it's not true.
I believe
it's a con game.
To what end?
I think they want a new constitution.
But like the young man that was speaking on as the pro for it today, does he really know what he's doing, or is he, as we affectionately call him, a useful idiot?
I don't know.
You don't know, do you?
I don't know.
We never know. We don't know.
Yeah, I don't know him. I just don't know.
Yeah, we don't. I knew it was kind of a rhetorical question.
Yeah.
But, I mean, wow. And I used the phrase because that was where I became most familiar with it, was in Tea Party meetings.
Yes.
You're aware of that? Wow. And it's just dawning on me the impact that it's had. And I'm an ex-sales guy, so I hate it when that happens to me.
I would like for you to write up in an email or in a paper the various sales marketing techniques he used.
I will be. As a matter of fact, we're on the same page.
Yeah.
I will write a blog post about the meeting, and that
Yeah.
was the angle I was going to take.
Good. And
I don't do
make sure
personal
to send
attacks.
me
I don't.
a link.
We're
Yeah.
going to correspond.
Yeah. Well, about personal attacks,
I mean, I look at
it is never a personal attack to comment truthfully on people's work.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's not a personal attack.
Which is why I
That's-
record.
Yeah.
Well, but
I have very bad.
Oh, sorry. That's my one.
Oh,
note.
yeah. Oh, yes.
That's one.
Yes.
Well, you heard me talking
I
about it
did.
earlier.
I heard you.
That's my one note from today.
Yeah.
About the pro side.
I have heard
My-
that same pattern.
Yeah, I guarantee you have.
See,
you know,
the
every
implication
salesman is trained in Sales 101 to use feel, felt, found.
Well, I think that the young man's vocation is inspirational speaking.
That would be apparent. That I could see that very much so. Yeah. Hey, hey, rah, rah. Okay. when sometimes you feel that way, but you are called to deliver a tough message.
Yes.
She just signaled me she has to go. I cannot imagine. Publius, thank you.
It was
Very,
my honor.
very, very much. I mean, it's like interviewing a rock star.
Well, thank you,
just,
but I'm really just a
I'm just-
person.
yeah. You're a humble servant. I get it. Keep up the good work.
I am. My goal is to become unnecessary and redundant, so that I can get back to my roses.
Yeah, you
and
need
my
to.
Greek.
You need exactly.
Yeah.
I won't be able to test you on the Greek, but I'll ask for some pictures of the roses.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure meeting you.
My pleasure.
Perfect. I hope you found that informative. It was a real eye opener for me. I was actually a firm believer in her since I got involved in the Ted Cruz being eligible for the presidential election. I won't call it controversy, but discussion. So anyway, Uncle Bocce, what'd you think? Uncle Bocce and I had we break bread before we do the show. So we were having, and we have a little bit of a discussion generally about what the show is going to be about. And hopefully we didn't let out all of our, it's not really venom, but we're definitely on two different sides of the Convention of States / CON / Publius Huldah's controversy. It's not a controversy, but discussion. Mm-hmm. Debate. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
So, what did you think? I mean, did you enjoy that conversation with her? Did you learn anything? Did you hear anything you didn't already know?
I enjoyed that conversation very well, and I previously had listened to the debate.
Yeah.
As well. I had not heard this interview until tonight.
Right. That was an hour and a half that he listened to. We recorded the debate, but I've never put it out on the public airwaves.
Right.
So.
And she is very formidable in her arguments and in her support of her argument. The things that she brings to support it.
Right.
And I can see where she's going with this. I don't yet completely agree with her. What I am left with from this interview is that, boy, do I have a lot more research to do.
I agree.
Okay, because before this, I knew what I knew, but I was really going along. It just made sense to me.
It does make
that Article 5. They put that in there for us so that we can combat a tyrannical. And she's twisting that all around. So I'm saying that she has convinced me enough to get down to work and do some more research.
Which is why, if you are a Doco and Show insider and got the email, we provided you with a link to her blog, and every piece of evidence that she presented at that debate and that exists is all on her blog. She has links to all the documents.
Yes.
And yes, I highly recommend, doing the research and
Absolutely. The one thing that I
she does answer the question why it is in why Article 5 is in there.
Yes, she does answer that. The question that she doesn't answer is, I know we have the First Amendment and we can redress our grievances to the government, but what is her constitutional solution to a runaway government that doesn't care about the Constitution anymore? You know, that's why I was so much behind COS.
Right.
Because I felt empowered.
Yeah.
I felt, wow, we really can do something about this.
I was right there with you.
Yeah, I know you were.
I was right there with you, and then I sort of backed off.
Yeah.
And started taking a look at it and diving and doing my own research. Mm-hmm. And the reason I backed off of the Convention of States was because Publius Huldah made a very, I thought, it suited my demeanor more so than the cost did. And I fancy myself a strict constitutionalist.
Yes, I feel I am too. Yeah.
The main thing I've always argued and complained when a candidate for any office, particularly a national office, House of Representatives in particular is where they seem to say it the most, is, what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to go up there and make law. Well, I really would appreciate it if you wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
We've had enough twists and turns in the law that have bastardized the Constitution that you can't even recognize it anymore. And if I say things that are they're constitutional, but they may well be illegal in today's world because of what's gone on for the last 100 years.
Exactly.
So, PH's solution is certainly not glamorous, and it gets a lot of pushback because you're just trying to roll back the clock 100 years, or all the way back to this dead document that old white guys with slaves wrote. That's what you're trying to do. Yeah, pretty much. That because it works. And the Article 5, the reason Article 5 was there, remember what James Madison said, and I reviewed it with her at the beginning of it, and that is, our government was built, the Constitution was built, everything about this country was built on the basis that we would have virtuous people of virtue and wisdom as our representatives. Mm-hmm. It was written with the Word of God. It was written, we needed God-fearing Christians with a lot of wisdom to serve. Mm-hmm. We have had that for a long, long time. Mm-hmm. And so it's very difficult to understand why the Constitution is the solution to what you just said, the tyrannical runaway government.
Yes.
Practicing the Constitution is the solution. And Convention of States says, but nobody's doing it, so we got to do something else. Scary. We're going to continue the discussion because I think it deserves quite a bit,
I think
frankly.
So too. I agree.
I understand there's a lot going on with Trump, and we didn't get around to it, but you can go anywhere and listen to Trump-nator stuff. And, we're getting he's doing exactly what he said he was going to do, and all of the liberals are up in arms, and most of the Republicans are going, yay, 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 but not all of them. Check it out. But say what you will, so far, he's a man of his word.
Yes,
he
so
is.
far,
Yep.
He's a man of his word. And like it or not, there is a lot to be said for that.
Yes.
I hope you enjoyed the conversation with PH. We will probably take up Convention of States next week unless something really humongous goes on, just because Uncle Bocce and I feel strongly about it. And we're rut row. Time to go. You have been listening to the Doc Owen Show. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. Now go out there this week and take care, pay attention, and God bless.
Bye-bye, folks. God bless.